Chapter 80. 7 ticks was a heaven-defying result that only Sword Maniac managed to achieve. Sword Tiger, Emotionless Sword, and Dominion Sword only had 8 ticks. Even though the duration didn't represent a person's ability. After all, some were good at playing it safe, some liked to take risks, and some liked to win by surprise. Different people had different battle styles. And with different battle styles, the results would be different as well. As the outer sect was changing, a huge piece of news was released. Yuan Tian broke through to the origin realm. Yuan Tian looked like he was 18 or 19 years old, but he was only 15 years old, the same age as Li Fuchen and Guan Shui. But Yuan Tian entered the Zhonglan sect at the age of 13 and was much older than them. A 15-year-old origin realm martial artist, there weren't many in the entire history of the Zhonglan sect. In the outside world, to be able to break through to the origin realm before the age of 25 was already considered an elite. Big news came wave after wave. 1 month later, Shang Guanhong also suddenly reached the origin realm, followed by Hong Feng and Zhao Mingyue. Among the top 10 outer sect disciples, 3 of them broke through to the origin realm. In fact, out of the 30,000 outer sect disciples, there would be thousands of outer sect disciples that broke through to the origin realm every year. But they weren't famous and didn't cause any commotion. The Qi realm was one level, and the origin realm was another. No matter how outstanding a Qi realm martial artist was, they would always be inferior to an origin realm martial artist. When an outer sect disciple meets an inner sect disciple, they would have to address them as seniors. If not, they might be taught a lesson if they met a bad-tempered one. Late stage of the Qi realm. On this day, Li Fuchen's cultivation finally broke through from the middle stage of the Qi realm to the late stage of the 9th level. Just one more step and he would be at the peak stage. All 3 sword styles are at the subperfection or perfection stage. I don't have much of a requirement for the location and time. Let's make another trip to Zhonglan Lake. Li Fuchen brought along his fishing gear and rushed towards Zhonglan Lake. Li Fuchen was already prepared to use a large amount of contribution points at all times. A body refinement technique was a resource-consuming technique. Some joked that for a strong body refinement martial artist, every inch of their flesh and every strand of hair were piled up with gold coins. Who knows, a single strand of hair might be worth a few hundred or even 1,000 gold coins. But there was nothing wrong with saying that. Due to body refinement martial artists consuming too many resources, coupled with the changes in their own qi and blood, their bodies were full of treasures. A powerful body refinement martial artist could use his own blood to save a severely injured and dying person. But it was also because of this that body refinement martial artists became top-notch materials in the eyes of many peerless powerhouses. They could use the flesh and blood of body-refining martial artists to refine pills, or use it to cultivate and devour the other party's flesh and blood essence. In short, cultivating body-refining techniques has its advantages and disadvantages. The benefit was that it could make one stronger. The downside was that he could become the material of a powerhouse at any time, and his fate would be miserable. Therefore, before they grew up, it was the consensus of body refinement martial artists not to completely expose their physical strength. On Zhonglan Lake, time flowed like water. In the Zhonglan sect, one after another outer sect disciples progressed to the origin realm and became inner sect disciples. A few months later, Gao Changtian, Fang Laihai, Sun Jun, Wu Qingmei, and Chao Yun had all advanced to the origin realm. The barrier between the peak of the 9th level of the Qi realm and the origin realm didn't make much of a difference to a 4-star bone frame. At most, it would take a few months. As such, among the top 10 outer sect disciples, there were only 4 left. Is this the power of 15,000 kilograms? In one of the houses on the fishing terrace, Li Fuchen punched into the air. The entire house shook, as though it was going to collapse at any moment. During these few months at Zhonglan Lake, Li Fuchen had consumed all the treasure fish he caught. But now, he had a higher requirement for resources. 1 first-tier treasure fish a day wasn't enough. He had to eat second-tier treasure fish. Hence, his cultivation speed was slightly slower. He spent a few months to increase his strength from 12,000 kilograms to 15,000 kilograms. Besides reaching the third rank of the interception form Dao, Li Fuchen's tripart sword style and dripping sword style were both at the trance stage. Only the soaring dragon sword style was slightly lacking and was only at the perfection stage. Li Fuchen reckoned that unless he reached the 9th rank of the Scarlet Mystic Flame technique or progressed to the Origin realm, the soaring dragon sword style wouldn't be able to reach the trance stage. At the same time, Li Fuchen's cultivation finally reached the peak of the 9th level of the Qi realm. Half a year should be enough. Li Fuchen muttered to himself. In the blink of an eye, he had been at the Zhonglan sect for more than a year and was now 16 years old. At the age of 16 he was 1.8 meters tall and didn't have a strong physique, but his weight was over 180 kilograms. Li Fuchen had a feeling that one day in the future, his body weight would exceed 500 kilograms. But that would be a long time in the future. 1 month later, Guan Shui and Qin Xiaoyu progressed to the Origin realm. Within a year, the top 10 outer sect disciples, with the exception of Li Fuchen, all progressed to the Origin realm. Among the top 20 outer sect disciples, only Li Fuchen didn't progress to the Origin realm. Gradually, there were rumors that Li Fuchen wouldn't be able to progress to the Origin realm within 3 years. 3 years later, Li Fuchen would be 19 years old. To progress to the Origin realm at the age of 19 was considered a low standard in the Zhonglan sect and would waste a lot of time. One had to know that inner sect disciples were completely different from outer sect disciples. Inner sect disciples could cultivate Xian class martial arts manuals more easily, and inner sect disciples could earn contribution points faster. All in all, the earlier one became an inner sect disciple, the better it was. Finally, at the 9th rank of the Scarlet Flame Mystic Technique. Inside the wooden hut by the Zhonglan Lake, Li Fuchen sat cross-legged on the floor. Half of his body was covered by the Scarlet Fire Qi. The dense pale red Qi was like a layer of dense flaming mist, making Li Fuchen look like a god of fire. Li Fuchen extended his hand and used a suction force. A teacup on the table a few meters away was sucked over and shattered into pieces. The suction force moved towards the fish pond, causing the water to ripple. But that was it. Suction through air, this is something only Origin realm martial artists can do. No wonder it is at the 9th rank of the Scarlet Flame Mystic Technique. Reaching the 9th rank of the Scarlet Flame Mystic Technique, Li Fuchen let out a breath of relief. He was now certain that the difficulty of breaking through was related to one's bone frame. The stronger one's bone frame, the easier it would be to break through. But a normal bone frame, no matter how good one's perception was, it would still be lacking. Of course, if the technique rank was high enough, this lack wouldn't be a problem and could be easily made up for. It's about time to go back. Li Fuchen packed his fishing gear and carried the treasure fish he caught recently back to the Zhonglan sect. Chapter 81. In the outer sect, only Li Fuchen hasn't advanced yet. I wonder when he will advance to the Origin realm. 16 is out of the question. Probably 17 or even 18. It is also impossible for 17 or 18 years old. The first checkpoint is nothing for 3-star bone frames and above, but for normal bone frames, it is a heavenly moat. Compared to Yuan Tian Shixiang, Li Fuchen is just a shooting star. Have you heard? Yuan Tian Shixiang has already progressed to the 2nd level of the Origin realm. I heard. Tsk progressing from the 1st level of the Origin realm to the 2nd level in 5 months. Such talent, 1 in a million. As time elapsed, everyone started to doubt Li Fuchen, especially when they found out that the inner sect disciple, Yuan Tian, had already broken through to the 2nd level of the Origin realm. They were all shocked and no longer compared Li Fuchen to Yuan Tian. Li Fuchen's perception may be better than Yuan Tian, but the path of martial Dao is not only about perception, but also cultivation aptitude. By the time Li Fuchen breaks through to the Origin realm, Yuan Tiandu might even be at the 4th or 5th level of the Origin realm. Back at the Zhonglan sect, after exchanging the treasure fish for contribution points, Li Fuchen immediately headed to the Tower of Tribulations. Since he was the outer sect number 1 disciple and had achieved 7 ticks in the Tower of Tribulations, he could no longer retreat. He might as well make himself more glorious. There were some things that you either didn't do, or once you did, you had to make sure that no one else could surpass you. 6 ticks. It was an incomparably shocking result. Excluding Li Fuchen, Sword Maniac's 7 ticks was the first in the Azure Water sect for decades. Li Fuchen's 6 ticks was the first in the Azure Water sect in the past century. Sword Maniac's perception might not be inferior to Li Fuchen, but his willpower wasn't as strong as Li Fuchen's. He was able to cultivate the mystic class mid-tier body refinement technique, interception form Dao, to the completion rank in such a short period of time. Body refining cultivation method was not something that could be cultivated with just a lot of resources. Every time one's physical strength reached a certain level, one would need an extremely strong willpower to control it. If one's willpower was not strong enough, one's qi and blood would be spoiled, and in serious cases, one would die from blood loss. Of course, most of the people wouldn't have such a situation because there were very few people like Li Fuchen who progressed at an astonishing speed. If he cultivated slowly, he would be able to raise his physical strength to a very high level. The prerequisite was that one's perception and resources were sufficient. No one has ever done it before, and no one will ever do it again. Li Fuchen might be the strongest outer sect disciple in 100 years. The result of 6 ticks shocked everyone to the point of numbness. How could anyone live like this? How could the future generations surpass such an achievement? Exiting the Tower of Tribulations, Li Fuchen went into seclusion. The process of breaking through to the origin realm was a long process. At the mortal realm, the Zhen Qi in a martial artist's body was only concentrated in the Dantian. And at the origin realm, the Qi would form a Qi whirlpool in the Dantian. The existence of the cyclone made it easier for martial artists to absorb heaven and earth Yuan Qi, and it was easier for them to control their true Qi. In the gloomy room, Li Fuchen breathed in and out. At the location of his Dantian, the red ball of light brightened and dimmed. When a martial artist reached the peak of the 9th level of the Qi realm, the Qi in their body could no longer be increased. Even if they consumed more medicinal pellets, it would only be a waste. The excess Qi would automatically dissipate into Yuan Qi and dissipate into the void. However, different people had different amounts of true Qi in their bodies. A person with a good root bone would have a more vigorous amount of true Qi. A person with a higher cultivation technique would have a more vigorous amount of true Qi. With the Scarlet Mystic Flame technique at the 9th rank, Li Fuchen's true Qi wasn't inferior to most people. Li Fuchen estimated that it should be on par with a 3-star bone frame. And the amount of true Qi would determine the time needed to break through. For those with more true Qi, their true Qi would be like a river. Forming a Qi whirlpool was easy. For those with less true Qi, their true Qi would be like a small river or even a small stream. It would be difficult for them to form a Qi whirlpool. As Li Fuchen revolved the 9th rank of the Scarlet Mystic Flame technique, the surging true Qi flowed through his meridians and flowed into his Dantian in an attempt to converge and form a Qi whirlpool. 1 cycle. 2 cycles. Unknowingly, a night had passed. Li Fuchen's body was covered in a layer of red, his clothes had long turned to ash and fell on the floor. Closing his eyes, Li Fuchen's consciousness concentrated on his meridians and Dantian. Within the empty Dantian, a pale red stream of Qi flowed in, intertwining and chasing each other like a flowing river. Gradually, a Qi whirlpool formed. This Qi whirlpool was very weak and could collapse at any moment. Li Fuchen had to carefully strengthen the Qi whirlpool without any carelessness or recklessness. 2 hours passed and it was now noon. The Qi whirlpool within Li Fuchen's Dantian was getting bigger, from the size of a thumb to the size of an egg, from the size of an egg to the size of a fist. Finally, the Qi whirlpool took shape. The originally pale red Qi whirlpool had now turned red, like a blazing flame whirlpool, resplendent and fiery. At the same time, a large amount of heaven and earth energy flowed into Li Fuchen's body. Li Fuchen could now continue his cultivation. 1st level of the origin realm, completed. So this is the 1st level of the origin realm? Li Fuchen exhaled a breath of turbid air, his eyes shone with brilliance, without a hint of fatigue. The moment he broke through to the origin realm, he felt his body was empty and needed to replenish a large amount of qi. This was mainly due to the fact that his original qi had been condensed into a qi whirlpool, leaving no trace of qi in other parts of his body. With a flip of his palm, a pill appeared in his hand. This was a high-tier, yellow-class, qi pill. It was used to replenish one's qi and was worth 1,000 contribution points. Swallowing the qi pill, Li Fuchen revolved the Scarlet Mystic Flame technique and began to refine the pill. Soon enough, the qi within Li Fuchen's body surged and an indescribable sense of satisfaction surged into his heart. Once the pill was refined, the emptiness vanished. Standing up, Li Fuchen's body trembled. Red qi seeped out of his body and turned into a dense red qi current that enveloped Li Fuchen. In an instant, Li Fuchen seemed to have turned into a flaming man. Qi manifestation. And it was the entire body's qi manifestation. This meant that Li Fuchen could use his qi to defend his entire body. Even if his body's defense wasn't high, he could still ignore the attacks of regular qi realm martial artists. Revealing a confident smile, Li Fuchen's right hand formed a claw, extending and withdrawing. A few meters away, the door of the house suddenly opened, allowing the dazzling sunlight to shine in. Walking out of the house, Li Fuchen stood in front of a giant boulder that was as tall as a human. With a casual palm strike on the giant boulder, the boulder instantly exploded, sending debris flying everywhere. Such a force was much stronger than when Li Fuchen executed his palm arts at the Qi realm. No wonder he is at the origin realm, his Qi is so concentrated. Li Fuchen praised. With the same amount of Qi, a palm strike from an origin realm martial artist would have at least twice the power of a Qi realm martial artist. Chapter 82. After progressing to the origin realm, Li Fuchen first had to report to the Outer Sect Grand Hall. The Outer Sect Grand Hall was the first hall of the Outer Sect. It was presided over by the Outer Sect Grand Elder, Xiao Changfeng, but he was rarely around. Today, the one presiding over the Grand Hall was the Outer Sect's third elder, Elder Song. Elder Song. Li Fuchen bowed to the elder. Elder Song was around 60 years old and had a beard. He lifted his head and was about to speak. All of a sudden, his eyes lit up. Li Fuchen, have you progressed to the origin realm? Elder Song inquired. Li Fuchen replied, Elder Song, I am here to apply to become an inner sect disciple. Miracle, this is a miracle. I have never seen or heard of any normal bone frame disciple progressing so quickly. Elder Song was excited. To be able to progress to the origin realm so quickly, it meant that Li Fuchen's potential was much stronger than expected. He thought that Li Fuchen would need at least 17 or 18 years of age to progress to the origin realm. If he were to progress by then, his value would be minimal and would not be comparable to prodigies. After all, the limit of a normal bone frame was the Earth realm. But the Tsanglan sect had at least 8,000 Earth realm martial artists. No matter how strong an Earth realm martial artist was, he would never be able to defeat a Heaven realm martial artist. As for those prodigies, as long as there were no accidents, they would basically become Heaven realm martial artists. Elite prodigies like Yuan Tian had a high chance of breaking through to the Reincarnation realm. A Reincarnation realm martial artist was equivalent to tens of thousands of Earth realm martial artists. It was because of them that the Tsanglan sect was as stable as Mt. Tai. Without a Reincarnation realm martial artist, the Tsanglan sect could easily be defeated by other sections. Li Fuchen, well done. Entering the origin realm at the age of 16. If you work hard, you might have a chance of progressing to the Heaven realm. Elder Song had high hopes for Li Fuchen. Excluding his bone frame, Li Fuchen's performance was much more outstanding than elite prodigies Yuan Tian. He was equivalent to the second sword maniac. No, from the results of the Tower of Tribulations, even Sword Maniac was inferior to him. This is the Inner Sect Preparation Disciple token. Take it to the Inner Sect Grand Hall. Someone will guide you there. Retrieving a bronze token from the drawer, Elder Song passed it to Li Fuchen. Thank you, Elder Song. Fuchen will not disappoint you. Li Fuchen received the bronze token with both hands and left the Outer Sect Grand Hall. It would be great if his bone frame was a 2-star bone frame or even a 1-star bone frame. Elder Song sighed with a look of pity in his eyes. The inner sect zone was behind the outer sect zone. It was close to the core of the Zhonglan sect, and the heaven and earth energy here was much denser than the outer zone. Other than that, the scenery in the inner sect disciple region was 10 times more beautiful than the outer sect disciple region. Along the way, the white jade avenue, the pavilions, the jade palaces, the majestic halls, and the beautiful mountain peaks were all beautiful scenery. Compared to this place, the buildings and mountain peaks in the outside world were like thatched cottages, dull and tasteless. Is this where I'm going to stay? Li Fuchen took a quick glance and wasn't in a hurry to reach the inner sect grand hall. That Yuan Tian is indeed a prodigy that is on par with Dominion Sword Xixiang. He is only at the second level of the Origin Realm and was able to defeat Chinchong Xixiang, who was at the third level of the Origin Realm. I admit that Yuan Tian has talent, but in terms of combat ability, he is still inferior to the outer sect's number 1 disciple, Li Fuchen. Li Fuchen does have some skills. A pity that with his bone frame, he will need at least 1 or 2 years to progress to the Origin Realm. By then, Yuan Tian will probably be at the 4th or 5th level of the Origin Realm. How can he compete? That's right. Yuan Tian is good in all aspects, while Li Fuchen is just good at perception. What's more, the Origin Realm and the Qi Realm are 2 different realms. Once he reaches the Origin Realm, he might not be able to continue to shine. A few inner sect disciples walked towards Li Fuchen. They didn't notice Li Fuchen and were discussing loudly. Just as Li Fuchen brushed past them, one of the inner sect disciples took a glance at Li Fuchen and was stunned. "Hey, why are you not walking anymore?" His companion walked a few steps and noticed that the inner sect disciple wasn't following. The inner sect disciple pointed at Li Fuchen's back. "It's Li Fuchen." "Li Fuchen? It can't be. What is he doing in the inner sect zone? Could it be? Impossible. He progressed to the Origin Realm so quickly? Come, let's follow and take a look." Curious, the few of them followed behind Li Fuchen. Sensing that someone was following him, Li Fuchen laughed and didn't bother. Soon enough, Li Fuchen arrived at the inner sect grand hall. Seeing Li Fuchen enter the grand hall, the few of them were flabbergasted and looked at each other. He really progressed to the Origin Realm. One of them swallowed his saliva. This is definitely big news. Let's go and spread the news. This is the hottest news of the year. Inner sect grand hall. The hosting elder received the bronze token from Li Fuchen and nodded. This is indeed the inner sect preparatory disciple token. You will stay in the outer sect zone for the next few days. 3 days later, come to the inner sect for the inner sect trials. If you pass the trials, you will officially become an inner sect disciple. If you fail the trials, try again 2 months later. If you fail all 3 trials, you will be demoted to an inner sect deacon apprentice. Advancing to the Origin Realm didn't mean that one could become an inner sect disciple. The Zhonglan sect's inner sect disciple selection process was very strict. Of course, it was just a relative term. Generally speaking, the passing rate of the inner sect trials was rather high, at least 50%. What's more, there were second and third chances. If you failed all 3 chances, it meant that you weren't the material the sect was looking for. Demoting to an inner sect deacon apprentice and serving the sect was the natural course of action. Leaving the inner sect grand hall, Li Fuchen returned to his own courtyard. What Li Fuchen didn't know was that the news of him progressing to the Origin Realm was spreading like wildfire. Towards the end, even those who didn't know him started to understand him. What a slap in the face. A few months ago, we were still discussing how many years Li Fuchen would need to step into the Origin Realm. I didn't expect it to be so fast. You can't blame us. Li Fuchen's advancement is completely illogical. Not only illogical, it is totally against common sense. I really doubt if he really has a normal bone frame. No matter what, he is now at the Origin Realm. This is a fact. The inner sect is going to be bustling. Plum Sword Shiji, Qinfanghua Shiji, Dominion Sword Xixiang, and now Yuan Tian and Li Fuchen. I wonder what will happen to the inner sect. Be it the inner sect or the outer sect, Li Fuchen's name was a hot topic. In the outer sect, Guan Peng and Shen Tuju were flabbergasted. Yang Kai was also flabbergasted. In the odd job disciple region, Li Yunhai, who was diligently cultivating, was at a loss when he received the news. It was as if he had lost all his fighting spirit. He didn't know what was the point of continuing to struggle. He painstakingly obtained the status of an odd job disciple. After entering the sect, he thought he would soon surpass Li Fuchen. But not long after, he received news of Li Fuchen's outstanding performance in the outer sect. Not long after, Li Fuchen became an influential figure in the outer sect. Then, Li Fuchen became the outer sect's #1 disciple. But Li Yunhai didn't give up. He believed that with Li Fuchen's normal bone frame, he would need at least 18 years of age to progress to the origin realm. He still had a chance to catch up. Why is this so? Li Yunhai mumbled. Chapter 83. In the inner sect, Fang Laihai and Qin Xiaoyu, who received the news, were dumbfounded. They all had a grudge against Li Fuchen. If Li Fuchen only progressed to the origin realm a few years later, they would be able to trample on Li Fuchen however they wanted. So what if he had heaven-defying perception? If his cultivation level couldn't keep up, everything was meaningless. But with Li Fuchen stepping into the origin realm so early, it would be hard for them to take revenge and trample on Li Fuchen. There was almost no hope left. When the rest of the prodigies received the news, they all had different expressions. Yuan Tian's eyes were filled with gloominess and battle intent. Zhao Mingyue's eyes were filled with curiosity and interest. Wu Qingmei's eyes were deep in thought. As for Guan Shui, she pursed her lips and was in a daze. 3 days later, Li Fuchen once again arrived at the inner sect Grand Hall. In the inner sect Grand Hall, other than Li Fuchen, there were close to 100 inner sect preparation disciples. Li Fuchen knew many of them. The Zhonglan sect had 30,000 outer sect disciples. On average, there would be 1,000 outer sect disciples who progressed to the origin realm every year. To save manpower and resources, the inner sect exams were held once a month. It didn't mean that once you advanced, you would have to wait. A total of 97 disciples. Since everyone is here, follow me to the 1,000 Waterfall River. The green-robed inner sect elder sized up the crowd and said. The group heading to the 1,000 Waterfall River was rather large. Other than the 97 preparation disciples and an inner sect elder who was in charge of the inner sect exams, there were also 10 inner sect deacons and 97 inner sect deacon apprentices. The 1,000 Waterfall River was rather far. If one were to walk there, it would take at least a few days. Outside the inner sect Grand Hall, a flock of cranes with a wingspan of over 5 meters flew down. In an instant, a violent gale blew on the ground, causing everyone to be unable to open their eyes. Li Fuchen's physique was astounding. Even with the violent gale, his eyes were still open. He realized that these cranes were all Class 1 spirit beasts. The spiritual qi within their bodies was about the same as a Class 1 demonic beast. In groups of a few, everyone got on the back of the cranes. The cranes soared into the sky and carried everyone. So fast. The biting cold gale was like a steel blade, extremely powerful. This was the time to see a person's ability. Some of the inner sect preparatory disciples had no choice but to sit down cross-legged to reduce the wind resistance. There were also some who forcefully stood there, but their bodies emitted different colored air currents to deflect the wind. Only a few people stood there as steady as Mount Tai, as if their feet were rooted to the ground. Especially Li Fuchen, who stood with his hands behind his back with a calm expression, as though he was standing on the ground. No wonder he is the outer sect #1 disciple, Li Fuchen. The other inner sect preparatory disciples said in admiration. But after a long period of time, except for Li Fuchen, the rest of the inner sect preparation disciples couldn't take it anymore. Resisting the gale consumed a lot of true qi. As the true qi in their bodies rapidly decreased, they had no choice but to sit down cross-legged. Seeing that everyone was seated, Li Fuchen didn't want to be too high-profile and calmly sat on the back of the red-crowned crane. Looking at the green-robed inner sect elder who was riding the wind, everyone revealed looks of envy. Each realm of the martial Dao had its own unique characteristics. Qi refinement realm, drawing qi into the body. Origin realm, manifesting qi. Earth realm, true Qi release. The heavenly dipper realm was able to walk on air. Songlan sect's inner sect elders were all heaven realm martial artists. Heaven realm martial artists, as the name suggests, were able to ascend to the heavens and enter the earth. They had remarkable abilities and were unparalleled in martial arts. If a clan was able to produce a heaven realm martial artist, that clan would immediately become one of the prestigious clans in the Songlan region. Fang Liahai's Fang clan, Yuan Tian's Yuan clan, were all prestigious clans in the Songlan region. Of course, the inner sect elders' clans were also prestigious clans. But above the prestigious clans were the grand clans. Grand clans had to have a long history and have plenty of heaven realm martial artists. In the Songlan region, there were only a few grand clans. Every single one of them had the authority to speak within the Songlan sect. The Red Crown Crane was very fast. At noon, everyone arrived at a spectacular scenic spot. Looking down from the sky, hundreds of white waterfalls were descending like white dragons entering the sea, emitting a rumbling sound. As they got closer, the sound got louder and the white waterfalls gradually appeared in front of everyone. There were hundreds of waterfalls. The shortest waterfall was a few tens of feet in length. The longer ones were 50 to 60 feet, and the longest one was at least 300 feet. It was like a shocking jade dragon, emitting a boundless Qi presence. Below the hundreds of waterfalls was a giant river. The river was undulating and had countless whirlpools, giving off an unfathomable feeling of danger. The red-crowned crane descended and landed on the empty ground in front of the thousand-violent river. With a wave of the green-robed inner sect elder's hand, an astonishing scene happened. On the thousand-violent river, an ice road that was emitting endless chilling Qi was formed, extending towards the waterfalls. "Follow me." The green-robed inner sect elder led the way on the ice road. How deep is the freezing Qi to be able to create an ice road on the river? The inner sect preparatory disciples gasped. "Let's go, what are you waiting for?" One of the inner sect deacons shouted. Hearing the command, everyone started to walk up. Walking on the ice road, Li Fuchen noticed that the ice road didn't have any signs of shaking, even though there were over 200 of them. Out of curiosity, Li Fuchen circulated his qi and seeped it under the ice road. 2 meters. The ice road was 2 meters thick, no wonder it could support so many people. In just a short moment, everyone arrived at the bottom of the waterfall. There were hundreds of waterfalls, and at the bottom of every waterfall, there were dozens of large and small boulders. Under the impact of the waterfall, these boulders were smooth and round, just like pebbles that were 1,000 times larger. The green-robed inner sect elder turned around and said, "Endure for 15 minutes under the 30-feet waterfall. If you can, you will start the next round. If you can't, you will be eliminated and come back for another round 2 months later." Hearing the instruction, everyone gulped. 30 feet of waterfall was 100 meters in height. A large amount of water rushing down from a height of 100 meters would require a lot of force. What's more, the boulders were smooth and round. It wasn't hard to imagine that it would be hard to stand on, which undoubtedly increased the difficulty. All right, all of you will rely on your own strength to stand on the boulders. If you can't get up after 15 minutes, then you don't have to. Each of you will be in charge of one person and time them. The 10 of you will supervise them. As he spoke, the green-robed inner sect elder instructed the 97 inner sect deacon apprentices and 10 inner sect deacons. Yes. The inner sect deacons and inner sect deacon apprentices bowed their heads and cupped their fists. The 30 feet of waterfall had a rapid flow. Due to the special structure of the waterfall, the force of the water rushing down was very concentrated and there wasn't even a single spot. The 97 inner sect preparatory apprentices tried to stand on the boulder. But the situation wasn't optimistic. Standing on the boulder was much more difficult than they imagined. The person beside Li Fuchen, who just got close to the boulder, was sent flying by the majestic water flow and was in a sorry state. I advise all of you to be more cautious. To a certain extent, standing on the boulder isn't as easy as enduring for 15 minutes. One of the inner sect deacon apprentices reminded. Li Fuchen nodded. In his opinion, standing on the boulder wasn't easy. After all, during the movement process, the center of gravity would be too unbalanced. Even though everyone used all their strength, there weren't many who managed to stand on the boulder in one go. Li Fuchen didn't wait any longer and revolved the Scarlet Mystic Flame technique. Red scarlet fire chi seeped out of his body and enveloped him like a layer of flames. Those who could cross the whirlpools easily were all dragons and phoenixes among men. As for the level of one's innate talent, he didn't care. He only cared about what was in front of him. At the end of the second round of assessment, only 72 out of the 80 people passed. The third test was a test of strength. The examination venue was at the Azure Water Sect's demonic beast farm. Riding on the immortal cranes, everyone began to rush back. By the time they arrived at the demonic beast breeding farm, it was already close to evening. The demon beast breeding farm was a huge pit. On the rock walls around the pit, there were many caves, which were closed by iron gates. From time to time, terrifying roars of demon beasts could be heard. At the center of the sinkhole was a wrestling ring. It was stained with blood and emitted killing intent. Your opponents are Class 2 low-tier demonic beasts. Within 30 minutes, those who can injure the demonic beasts will pass the test. The green-robed inner sect elder stood with his hands behind his back and announced loudly, "Injure a Class 2 low-tier demonic beast?" Even though everyone knew the contents of the test, when they felt the killing intent of the demonic beast breeding farm, they couldn't help but have goosebumps and shiver. First, Chen Xiaotian. Chen Xiaotian was 20 years old this year. With his purple chi technique at the 8th rank, he was a nameless figure in the outer sect and was never an influential figure. He nervously arrived at the wrestling ring, lifted his head and looked around. Clang. On the second level of the rock wall, a metal gate opened up, revealing an immeasurably deep cave. Soon enough, a demonic dog covered in black scales peeked its head out. Class 2 low-tier demonic beast, Black Scale Hound. Woof! The Black Scale Hound's bark was horrifying, sharp and clear, just like a child's howl. Holding the yellow class, high-tier treasure sword in his hand, Qin Xiaotian couldn't help but shiver. This was the first time he saw a Class 2 low-tier demonic beast, and it was much more fearsome than he imagined. Hee, how long do you think this shitty can last? I'm guessing 10 breaths. You are overestimating him. I think it won't be more than 5 breaths. Other than Li Fuchen's group, there were plenty of inner sect disciples here to temper their combat skills. Seeing Qin Xiaotian in such a state, some of the inner sect disciples laughed. The Black Scale Hound seemed to have sensed Qin Xiaotian's nervousness and leaped out of the cave. The moment it landed, it lowered its body and followed an arc towards Qin Xiaotian. Qin Xiaotian was already nervous. Seeing that the Black Scale Hound didn't attack from the front, but from the side, he got even more nervous and his body stiffened. Clang! Qin Xiaotian's artifact sword flew out of his hand. Just as it was about to be killed by the Black Scale Hound, an inner sect deacon waved his hand and used chi to force the Black Scale Hound away. Qin Xiaotian, eliminated. The inner sect deacon who announced the results frowned. The green-robed inner sect elder frowned too. Such a weak mentality, such a person wouldn't have a future. One by one, the inner sect preparation disciples entered the ring. Out of every 10, 2 or 3 would be eliminated. Class 2 low-tier demonic beasts were agile and had demonic chi to protect their bodies. It wasn't an easy task to leave a wound on the body of the beast. Next, Li Fuchen. The inner sect deacon took a deep breath and announced Li Fuchen's name. Hearing the announcement, everyone's eyes focused on Li Fuchen, including the expressionless green-robed inner sect elder. He is the outer sect's #1 disciple, Li Fuchen. Because of him, Elder Yu personally presided over the inner sect disciple exams. Normally, inner sect elders don't have to bother about such things. It is usually handled by the inner sect deacons. Look, from the battle with the Class 2 low-tier demonic beast, we can see if he is just a name or if he is truly capable. That's right. A real demonic beast isn't something that the energy beasts in the Tower of Tribulations can compare to. How can energy beasts have the ferocity and killing intent of a real demonic beast? These inner sect disciples have heard of Li Fuchen's reputation, but seeing is believing. Without seeing it for themselves, they wouldn't believe that Li Fuchen was as outrageous as the rumors said. Standing on the stage, Li Fuchen lifted his head. On the second floor of the cave, a metal gate opened. Swish! A black shadow flew out and actually hovered in the air, not landing on the ground. This was a ferocious bird with a 3-meter wingspan, gray feathers, and claws the size of a dustpan. This is too exaggerated. He actually used a flying demonic beast to test him. I reckon Elder you did it on purpose. This is going to be a problem. Even though a flying demonic beast's attack power is about the same as a land-based demonic beast, the speed of a flying demonic beast is too fast. Chapter 85. Iron-winged bird, a level 2 low-tier flying demonic beast. The iron-winged bird's wings were extremely hard, allowing it to slash its enemies while gliding at high speed. This was how it got its name. This metal-winged bird was extremely crafty and didn't immediately attack Li Fuchen. Instead, he swooped down from the sky as if he was flaunting his strength. His wings left 2 cracks on the ground of the arena. So powerful! The other inner sect preparatory disciples were dumbfounded. The demonic beasts on the ground generally used their teeth to attack, but the iron-winged bird could use its wings to slash, its claws to attack, and even its beak to peck. How could one fight against it? Li Fuchen, I wonder how you are going to kill it. The green-robed inner sect elder, you stared at Li Fuchen. Others only needed to injure a class 2 low-tier demonic beast, but Li Fuchen was different. He was the outer sect's #1 disciple. If he couldn't even kill a class 2 low-tier demonic beast, it would be too disappointing. Although the difficulty of killing the iron-winged bird was much higher than other class 2 low-tier demonic beasts, it was still extremely difficult to kill it. The iron-winged bird's voice was very sharp, like the sound of 2 pieces of steel pressing against each other. With a flap of its wings, a violent gale was created. The steel-winged bird turned into a blurry shadow, descending from the sky and diving towards Li Fuchen. The speed was too fast, many could only see the afterimage of the metal-winged bird. This kind of speed wasn't something a first-level origin realm martial artist could hope to achieve. Even dodging would be difficult. Like a dark cloud, the metal-winged bird's massive figure instantly enveloped Li Fuchen. Could it be that he was scared silly? One of the inner sect disciples saw that Li Fuchen didn't do anything and couldn't help but ask. So what if you're the #1 disciple of the outer sect? You've never experienced a real battle, so you're still lacking. Losing so miserably, Elder you must be very disappointed. Elder Yu's face had a flash of disappointment. Li Fuchen had already missed the best time to dodge. Normally, he would dodge first, then strike with his sword and kill with 1 strike. This was a true swordsman. But at this moment, a red crescent of mist suddenly burst forth from the back of the iron-winged bird. In the next moment, the iron-winged bird's huge body was torn apart from the middle. Blood shot into the sky as if it was raining blood. Low-tier yellow-grade sword art, crescent sword art. In the sky full of blood rain, Li Fuchen acted as if he had done a trivial matter. He elegantly sheathed his sword and stood there like a javelin. As soon as the blood rain came within a foot of his body, it immediately evaporated and turned into a blood-colored mist. Although a low-tier yellow-class sword art's power was lacking, it was still as fast as lightning. What's more, with Li Fuchen's ability, even if he didn't use his sword arts, he would still be able to slay the metal-winged bird in a single blade. So calm, so domineering. Killing the iron-winged bird with a single slash? Am I seeing things? Hey, Lu Wei, can you kill the iron-winged bird with a single slash? What a joke, of course I can't do it. I am only at the 2nd level of the origin realm. In the Tsanglan sect, 90% of the 2nd level origin realm martial artists wouldn't be able to do it. Even a 3rd level origin realm martial artist might not be able to do it so easily. The inner sect disciples inhaled a breath of cold air. Is he still human? The other inner sect preparatory disciples were trembling. This was the first time a person had witnessed such a shocking event. Their bodies were trembling uncontrollably. Good, very good. The outer sect's #1 disciple is fully deserving. Elder Yu's eyes shrunk as he laughed heartily. This child has a bright future ahead of him. Seems like we need to befriend him in the future. The 10 inner sect deacons were all Earth Realm martial artists. With their experience, they could naturally tell that Li Fuchen's combat ability was simply earth-shattering and not inferior to any of them. Due to Li Fuchen's outstanding performance, the rest of the exams were dull and boring. Finally, only 45 disciples were left after the 3 rounds of exams. 52 disciples were eliminated. These 52 disciples would have to wait another 2 months before they could continue to participate in the inner sect exams. If they failed 3 times, they would no longer have the chance and would be demoted to an inner sect deacon apprentice to serve the sect. The sky pit was brightly lit, but outside the sky pit, it was already dark. Elder Yu allowed the 45 disciples to return first and gather at the inner sect grand hall the next morning. The next morning, Li Fuchen once again arrived at the inner sect grand hall. Dressed in a green robe, Elder Yu spoke to the 45 disciples. Firstly, 3rd grade inner sect disciples, come and collect your inner sect disciple token, robes, sword, and residence key. Report your name and come forward. Inner sect disciples were also separated into 3 grades. 3rd grade was the lowest and 1st grade was the highest. As the names rang out, those who heard the names were discouraged, but they didn't dare to show any dissatisfaction and obediently went forward to collect their items. After the 3rd grade inner sect disciple was the 2nd grade inner sect disciple. Once everyone had collected their items, only Li Fuchen was left. Li Fuchen, 1st grade inner sect disciple. Elder Yu spoke in a pleasant tone. A 1st grade inner sect disciple was much more prestigious than a 1st grade outer sect disciple. In the outer sect, a 1st grade outer sect disciple would have a courtyard and could redeem 1,000 gold coins worth of sect items every month. There weren't any other benefits. But a 1st grade inner sect disciple had many more benefits. Besides having a courtyard when redeeming sect items, it was 70% off. In the outer sect, only prodigies could redeem sect items at half price and 5-star bone frame prodigies could get a 30% discount. Actually, with your performance, you are more than qualified to be a prodigy. But you should know that the sect emphasizes on bone frame, at least before the Earth Realm. Elder Yu felt it was a pity. He originally wanted Li Fuchen to become an inner sect prodigy, but it was rejected by the others. Elder Yu, Fuchen is already satisfied. Many thanks for Elder Yu's generosity. Li Fuchen was satisfied with this result. With a 30% discount when redeeming sect items, he could save 3,000 contribution points for 10,000 contribution points, or 30,000 contribution points for 100,000 contribution points. This was a huge sum of contribution points. But neither arrogant nor rash, neither servile nor overbearing. I have high hopes for you. Elder Yu's admiration for Li Fuchen grew. The inner sect disciple robes were pale green and the accompanying sword was a peak tier, yellow class, black iron sword. Just this sword alone would be worth a few thousand gold coins in the outside world. Fortunately, the sect had a smithing hall. Every year, large quantities of weapons would be forged. A portion of these weapons were kept for personal use, while the rest were sold to the outside world. If not, just purchasing an inner sect disciple's accompanying sword would cost a few million gold coins. After collecting the inner sect disciple items, Li Fuchen was led by an inner sect deacon apprentice to his residence. It was still an independent courtyard, but this time it was on one of the inner sect disciples' district's spiritual peaks. Li Fuchen took a quick look. This mountain peak had about a dozen independent courtyards. The difference in treatment is too huge. The sect is still the sect after all. No matter how calm Li Fuchen was, he couldn't help but be fascinated. Staying in such an independent courtyard, not only was the environment quiet, there was also a lot more space to cultivate. He could totally find a place outside the courtyard to cultivate. Chapter 86. I only have 50,000 plus contribution points left. It isn't enough to redeem a mystic class, high-tier body refinement technique. Even if I redeem it, I don't have the resources to cultivate it. After becoming an inner sect disciple, Li Fuchen began to consider his next course of action. It was impossible to cultivate a mystic class, high-tier body refinement technique, at least not for now. The interception form Dao, a mystic class, mid-tier body refinement technique required 75,000 contribution points. A mystic class, high-tier body refinement technique would require at least 200,000 contribution points. Even with a 30% discount, it would still require 140,000 contribution points. That wasn't all, but the crucial point was the lack of resources to cultivate. A single yellow class, peak-tier body tempering pill would require 10,000 contribution points. To cultivate a mystic class, high-tier body refinement technique to completion, it would require at least 100 pills. That would be at least 1,000,000 contribution points. Speaking of mystic class, high-tier martial arts manuals, it was necessary to mention the treatment of a first-grade inner sect disciple. In the Tsanglan sect, only first-grade inner sect disciples, direct disciples, and inner sect elders could redeem mystic class, high-tier martial arts manuals. Most of the outer sect elders didn't even have the qualifications to do so, not even with contribution points. To be able to become a first-grade inner sect disciple, Li Fuchen had already succeeded. Guan Hong, Guan Yen, Yang Lai, Yang Zhan, and Li Shanhe were all third-grade inner sect disciples. Their status in the sect couldn't even be compared to Li Fuchen. I am now an origin realm martial artist. I can cultivate a light body technique now. Li Fuchen thought to himself. The lowest grade of a body refinement technique was peak tier, yellow class. The lowest grade of a light body technique was mystic class, loader. A light body technique had a high requirement on one's chi. If one wasn't at the origin realm, no matter how good one's perception was, they wouldn't be able to utilize the advantages of a light body technique. Other than that, it is also necessary to cultivate a mystic class, low-tier sword art. As of now, Li Fuchen had cultivated a total of 9 sword arts. 2 yellow class, low tier, with a crescent sword style and tiger fang cross slash. 2 yellow class, mid tier, with a clear breeze sword style and Xiao Shang sword style. 1 yellow class, high tier, was the red jade sword style. 4 yellow class, peak tier, were the scarlet fire sword style, tripart sword style, dripping sword style, and soaring dragon sword style. It was said that quality was more important than quantity, but Li Fuchen felt that in order to reach the pinnacle of sword Dao, one had to cultivate a large number of sword arts. As the saying went, learn from others' strong points. A large number of sword arts would give Li Fuchen a large amount of sword Dao foundation. One day, this foundation would become the foundation of Li Fuchen's sword Dao. Had it not been for the lack of stamina, Li Fuchen would have loved to cultivate dozens of yellow-class sword arts. In the afternoon, after lunch, Li Fuchen went to the inner sect martial arts hall to redeem a light body technique and a mystic class, low-tier sword art. They were the wind shadow technique and the meteor sword technique. The wind shadow technique was named after the wind, and it was similar to the whirlwind kick technique. However, the whirlwind kick technique was, after all, a leg technique. It only touched on the effects of lightening the body. As for the wind shadow technique, it was a movement technique that lived up to its name. After cultivating it to a certain level, one's movement would be like the wind, or even faster than the wind. As for the meteor sword art, it was a sword art that focused on extreme speed and lethality. This swordplay only had one move, and it was called Meteor Fall. A very domineering and ethereal name. Inner sect disciples have to complete a sect mission every year. But I'm not in a hurry. I will wait until the 9th or 10th month. Before that, I should first complete the wind shadow technique in meteor sword art. Sect missions were more or less dangerous. Even though Li Fuchen wasn't a regular first-level origin realm martial artist, but there were too many experts in the world. Any formidable origin realm martial artist could easily kill him. Before going on a mission, it was better to increase one's ability. There were only benefits and no disadvantages. Hurry and send him to the medical hall. If he is late, he won't be able to be saved. On the way back, Li Fuchen saw 4 inner sect disciples sprinting. One of them was carrying a youth with a dark expression on his back. From the looks of it, he was either poisoned or injured by someone, and it was a poison technique that injured him. Isn't that Xianxia? How did he get such a serious injury? I reckon he met an underworld martial artist that cultivates poison techniques. Sigh. Every year there are plenty of inner sect disciples that die in the hands of the underworld martial artists. It is already good enough to come back alive. Isn't that so? In another month's time, I will be going on a mission too. I hope the mission goes smoothly and without any accidents. On the side of the path, there were plenty of inner sect disciples pointing and gossiping. Seems like the sect missions are much more dangerous than I thought. Seeing this scene, Li Fuchen had a new understanding of the sect missions. Come to think of it, the sect didn't need flowers in a greenhouse, but rather a big tree that could shelter the sect from the wind and rain. If one didn't experience certain things, how could they grow so quickly? Returning to his courtyard, Li Fuchen first picked up the wind shadow steps to cultivate. The wind shadow steps was extremely mystical. According to the manual, once at the subcompletion stage, the body would be as light as a swallow. At the completion stage, not only would one's speed be abnormally fast, one's movements would also be ghostly and silent. With the green soul spirit, Li Fuchen spent 3 days to cultivate the wind shadow steps to the entry stage. Circulating his qi according to the wind shadow steps, his body felt lighter. Even without wrapping his legs with qi, he could still easily stand on a branch that was as thick as a wrist without any signs of falling. 1 month later, wind shadow steps at subcompletion stage. Right now, Li Fuchen could already stand on a branch that was as thick as a finger without falling. The light body technique sure is mystical. Li Fuchen's eyes shined. The light body technique was also a type of technique and had a unique qi circulation method. Every time he revolved the light body technique, Li Fuchen felt the restraints of the earth lessening. With just a slight movement, he would be able to glide forward without a sound. But the speed couldn't be too fast. If it was too fast, there would be a sonic boom. I wonder what it would feel like to cultivate the wind shadow steps to the completion stage. It was a wonderful feeling to have the body lighten. Even though Li Fuchen could stand on the surface of the water previously, it was because of his qi. When qi was spread out, it could disperse the downward pressure on the body. The effect was similar to stepping on a boat or a basin. But the light body technique was different. It allowed the user to become lighter. Li Fuchen was still unable to stand on the surface of the water, but once the wind shadow steps reached a higher rank, it shouldn't be a problem to stand on the surface of the water. After all, he could already stand on a branch that was as thick as a finger. The only regret was that because the light body technique had a unique qi circulation method, it couldn't be executed at the same time as the Scarlet Mystic Flame technique. When executing the Scarlet Mystic Flame technique, he couldn't execute the wind shadow steps. When executing the wind shadow steps, he couldn't execute the Scarlet Mystic Flame technique. Of course, this was just a small problem. His entire body was filled with scarlet fire qi. Even if he didn't revolve the Scarlet Mystic Flame technique, he could still burst out with 80% to 90% of its power. In fact, it wasn't just the light body technique. Some formidable martial arts had their own unique qi circulation methods. But there were differences between qi circulation methods. The qi circulation methods of cultivation techniques were used to absorb the heaven and earth energy to cultivate qi. The light body technique and martial arts qi circulation methods were a type of utilization of qi. Chapter 87. Unknowingly, Li Fuchen had been at the Zhanglan sect for 2 years. Outer sect. Every day, there would be a large number of prodigies coming to the Zhanglan sect to participate in the outer sect disciple exams. Thinking about it, it should be about time for Yunwu City's prodigies to arrive. But Li Fuchen wasn't interested to know who the prodigies from Yunwu City were and how many of them were from the 4 major clans. He was immersed in his own world. On the official road near the Zhanglan Mountains, a group of people were galloping at high speed. On the back of the horses, there was a blue-robed elder and a group of youths, along with 3 other youths. Among the 3 youths, There was a pretty girl in red who was looking left and right with a face full of excitement and curiosity. The pretty girl in red was Guan Mei. She was the same age as Li Fuchen and had a 1-star bone frame. Originally, a 1-star bone frame didn't have much of a chance to stand out in the genius contest. But in a city, there would always be times when there were more or less prodigies. Li Fuchen's batch of genius contest was known as the pinnacle of Yunwu City in decades. There was Li Fuchen who defied common sense and had a normal bone frame. There was also Zhu Hongxiu and Yang Kai who were 3-star bone frames. In previous years, there was basically number 3-star bone frames. What's more, there was Guan Shui who didn't participate in the genius contest, but still had a 4-star extraordinary bone frame. For this year's genius contest, there were only 3 spots. The Guan clan took 1, the Yang clan took 1, and the last one was Zhu Xiaoming. Zhu Xiaoming was Zhu Hongxiu's cousin and the only 2-star bone frame in Yunwu City. The blue-robed elder looked back at the 3 and shook his head. Among the 3 of them, other than Zhu Xiaoming who had a slight chance of becoming an outer sect disciple, the rest could only be odd job disciples. Odd job disciples were at the bottom of the Zhonglan sect. On average, only 1 out of 100 odd job disciples had a chance of becoming an outer sect disciple. The rest could only slowly advance, and after breaking through to the origin realm, they would become inner sect odd job disciples. But once inner sect odd job disciples reached a certain level, they could join the Zhonglan army. The Zhonglan army was the Zhonglan sect's army. Once a sect war broke out, the Zhonglan army would be the first to charge. Even though it was dangerous, it was easier for a martial artist to break through in the midst of life and death. There were some who joined the Zhonglan army and broke through to become the middle and upper echelons of the Zhonglan army. In short, the path of an odd job disciple was a bumpy one. There were not many fortuitous encounters, and it would be a waste of time. Many people couldn't stand the life of an odd job disciple and had no choice but to apply to return to their families. The inner sect could not feel the changes in the outer sect at all. Time flew by. In a forest at the waist of Lingxiu Mountain, a figure was like a ghost, shuttling back and forth between the trees. Every time he was about to fall, he only needed to lightly tap the tip of his foot on a branch that was as thick as a little finger, and he would immediately borrow the force to soar into the air. With a sudden increase in speed, Li Fuchen instantly appeared on the ground. As expected of a body lightning technique. It took me 4 months to cultivate the wind shadow steps to the 3rd layer. The wind shadow technique was split into 6 levels. The first level was initial glimpse, the second level was small success, the 3rd level was follow your heart, the 4th level was perfection, the 5th level was great perfection, and the 6th level was perfection. In fact, it was the entry stage, minor accomplishment, proficient stage, and great accomplishment. The great accomplishment was further divided into the perfection stage, the great perfection stage, and the trance stage. As a mystic class, low-tier body lightning technique, the wind shadow steps was much harder to cultivate than a mystic class, low-tier martial arts. Not only did one have to comprehend the essence of the technique, one had to open up the corresponding meridians. For Li Fuchen to be able to cultivate the wind shadow steps to the 3rd rank in just 4 months, was already an incredible feat. It was a known fact that most of the inner sect disciples would need at least 1 or 2 years to reach the 2nd rank of a mystic class, low-tier body lightning technique. To reach the 3rd rank, it was basically impossible without at least 5 years. Withdrawing the wind shadow steps and revolving the scarlet mystic flame technique, Li Fuchen's right hand seemed to be coated with a layer of alcohol, as a red scarlet fire chi was emitted. Crackle! A palm strike landed on a tree that was as thick as 2 people hugging it. The trunk of the tree exploded and was charred black. In these 4 months, Li Fuchen didn't just improve his wind shadow steps. His main cultivation technique, the Scarlet Mystic Flame technique, had already reached the 10th rank. Based on the speed of the Scarlet Mystic Flame technique when he was at the Qi realm, Li Fuchen would need at least a year to break through to the 10th rank. But that was then and this is now. Cultivating the Mystic class, mid-tier Scarlet Mystic Flame technique while at the Qi realm would result in indigestion, limiting one's perception. But at the Origin realm, It was basically the lowest requirement to cultivate the Scarlet Mystic Flame technique. As one's cultivation level increased, it would be easier to cultivate. Of course, the higher the level of the Scarlet Mystic Flame technique, the harder it would be to cultivate. Li Fuchen, who was immersed in his cultivation state, didn't want to bother about anything else. He didn't intend to go out and earn contribution points either. Earning contribution points would take up some of his energy and time. Being constantly on the move would cause his cultivation state to deteriorate. He had already decided that before his first sect mission, he would not do anything else but cultivate on the mountain. Days passed by. Li Fuchen's overall ability was increasing bit by bit. Such a horrifying sword style. Looking at the giant pig iron ore that was pierced by a sword 3 steps away, Li Fuchen couldn't help but raise his eyebrows. He didn't use any of his physical strength, but purely channeled his chi into the black iron sword. The mystic class, Loter meteor sword style, was much harder to cultivate than he imagined, but also much stronger. This sword style only had one sword move, called Meteor Fall. When the sword was executed, not only was it fast, it also had an indescribable penetrative force. Even though the pig iron ore was only a yellow class, low tier ore, it was at least twice as hard as normal rocks. Low-leveled origin realm martial artists could shatter the pig iron ore and make a hole in it. But to pierce through such a thick piece of pig iron ore, it was extremely difficult. This sword style was specifically targeted at body refinement techniques. With a single thrust, it didn't matter how strong the opponent's defense was, it would still be able to pierce through. Li Fuchen reckoned that his own interception form Dao wouldn't be able to withstand the Meteor Fall sword move. Of course, the Meteor Fall sword move wouldn't be able to kill him in a single strike, it would at most injure him. Shio! 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 The black iron sword in Li Fuchen's hand was like a flashing meteor, piercing through the pig iron ore from time to time. One day later, the human-sized pig iron ore that looked like a hornet's nest broke apart into hundreds of pieces. Li Fuchen immediately took out another human-sized pig iron ore from the corner of the courtyard. Raw iron ores were worth 1 contribution point per kg. A human-sized pig iron ore would weigh around 10,000 kilograms and would be worth 10,000 contribution points. As a first-grade inner sect disciple, Li Fuchen could borrow raw iron ores from the resource hall as long as he returned them in the future. It didn't matter if it was complete or not, as long as the weight wasn't reduced. Since the raw iron ores had to be put into the furnace. Other first-grade inner sect disciples were the same as Li Fuchen, they would use raw iron ores to cultivate. Regular rocks were too fragile for them. Some of the more experienced first-grade inner sect disciples would even borrow yellow class, mid-tier ores to cultivate. Chapter 88. At first, it was 1 piece a day, then 2 pieces a day, then 3 pieces a day. Li Fuchen's speed of destroying the raw iron ores was getting faster and faster. Luckily, he would always borrow 10 human-sized raw iron ores, saving him a lot of trouble. The raw iron ores are still too weak. Seems like I have to redeem the yellow class, mid-tier, fine iron ores. Li Fuchen called a few dozen odd-job disciples to help him transport the crushed raw iron ores to the resource hall. He then borrowed 2 human-sized fine iron ores. A fine iron ore was worth 6 contribution points per kg. A human-sized fine iron ore would be at least 10,000 kilograms. 2 pieces would be at least 100,000 contribution points. Leaving behind the receipt, Li Fuchen left the resource hall. Clang! A stream of light flashed in midair. On the human-sized fine iron ore, sparks flew. Large amounts of fine or powder that was smaller than sand splattered on the ground. As the stream of light dissipated, Li Fuchen sheathed his sword. Seems like I have to waste at least 1,000 contribution points this time. The last time he returned raw iron ores, for every 10,000 kilograms, there was an average loss of 100 kilograms. It was mainly due to the loss of ores during sword practice. As Meteor Fall improved day by day, Li Fuchen's sword presence got stronger. For the first half a year, he spent most of his energy on cultivating the Wind Shadow steps. He only managed to reach subcompletion for Meteor Fall. These few days, his sword moves progressed at a rapid pace and was almost at the stage where he could execute them as he pleased. Noon was the best time for Li Fuchen to cultivate his qi. As usual, Li Fuchen sat cross-legged on the fake mountain with his 5 hearts facing the sky. In his inner vision state, Li Fuchen saw his soul spirit. The originally green soul spirit was now 20% pale blue. Li Fuchen remembered that when he was at the peak of the 9th level of the qi realm, it was only 5%. Seems like the advancement of my cultivation level will speed up the soul spirit's transformation. This is a good thing. Revealing a smile, Li Fuchen revolved the Scarlet Mystic Flame technique to absorb the energy of heaven and earth to strengthen his cultivation. Yuan Tian spent 5 months to reach the 2nd level of the Origin Realm. Li Fuchen spent 6 months to reach the 2nd level of the Origin Realm. In terms of cultivation talent, Li Fuchen was still lacking compared to Yuan Tian. It wasn't obvious at the Qi realm, but once one reached the Origin realm, the difference in cultivation talent would become more obvious. At the Disha realm, it would be even more obvious. Of course, when compared to Yuan Tian, Li Fuchen was 1 level lower, but when compared to a 4-star bone frame, Li Fuchen wasn't inferior at all. And because the Scarlet Mystic Flame technique was at the 10th rank, Li Fuchen's cultivation speed was actually faster than a 4-star bone frame. On this day, Li Fuchen came to the cafeteria for a meal. The food in the inner sect dining hall was 10 times more expensive than the outer sect dining hall. A normal meal cost 1 silver coin, a nutritious meal cost 1 gold coin, and a high-class meal cost 10 gold coins. If every meal was a high-class one, it would be more than 10,000 gold coins a year. This was not a small number. After ordering a high-class meal, Li Fuchen found a place to sit down. Did you guys hear? Fang Lihai was taught a lesson by a senior brother. You must be talking about that arrogant junior brother Fang Lihai. Serves him right? Does he still think this is the outer sect? This is the inner sect. That's right. In the outer sect, Fang Lihai's batch of 4-star bone frames only added up to 10. But in the inner sect, there are plenty of 4-star bone frames, several times more than in the outer sect. Fang Lihai isn't considered an outstanding existence in the inner sect. Hearing the conversation at the next table, Li Fuchen laughed in his heart. It seemed like this Fang Lihai had finally suffered. In the outer sect, Fang Lihai was a genius. But in the inner sect, there were too many geniuses. Furthermore, these geniuses had cultivated for many years. How could Fang Lihai compare? Let alone Fang Lihai, even if Yuan Tian was too arrogant, he would be taught a lesson. A 5-star bone frame might have a great chance to break through to the reincarnation realm and become a tycoon-class figure, but it was just a hope. What's more, a 4-star bone frame also had hopes of breaking through to the reincarnation realm. It was just that one had a higher chance and the other had a lower chance. In short, in the inner sect, not only did one look at one's aptitude, it also looked at one's strength. No one could tell what would happen in the future. On the 8th month, Li Fuchen's Wind Shadow Steps and Meteor Sword style were still at the completion stage. He suddenly realized that perhaps it was no longer feasible to cultivate in silence. It had to be an actual battle. Only through actual battle could one comprehend martial arts. Without actual battle experience, one would never know if there were any flaws in one's martial arts. Time to accept a sect mission, Li Fuchen muttered to himself. The next day, Li Fuchen arrived at the mission hall. The majestic mission hall took up a huge area and there were plenty of people inside. When Li Fuchen arrived, there were dozens of people in the midst of choosing their missions. Inner sect disciple missions were segregated into 4 grades and each grade had 3 difficulties. The 4 grades were low-tier, mid-tier, high-tier, and peak-tier missions. They corresponded to low-level Origin Realm martial artists, middle-level Origin Realm martial artists, high-level Origin Realm martial artists, and peak-stage Origin Realm martial artists. Each grade of mission was separated into normal, elite, and difficult difficulties. For the first time, one could only choose a low-tier mission. As for the second time, there were no restrictions. Li Fuchen took a look. Normal difficulty low-tier missions had a reward of 300 to 500 contribution points, which was very little. Elite difficulty low-tier missions had a reward of 600 to 1,000 contribution points. Hard difficulty low-tier missions had a reward of 1,200 to 2,000 contribution points. It wasn't a lot. Without any hesitation, Li Fuchen picked one of the difficulty low-tier missions. The mission details were, kill the wanted criminal Jiang Dahai and bring back his head. The mission reward was 1,800 contribution points. Li Fuchen originally thought that the target of the mission would be at the 1st to 3rd level of the origin realm. He didn't expect Jiang Dahai to be at the 4th level of the origin realm. But after thinking about it, he felt that it was reasonable. Outsiders might have a high cultivation level, but their techniques and martial arts were far inferior to sect disciples. After accepting the mission, Li Fuchen immediately left the Zhanglan sect and headed towards the mission location, Blackrock City. Along the way, Li Fuchen used the wind shadow steps to hasten his journey. When half of his qi was used up, Li Fuchen stopped to meditate and recover his qi. Got to say, the speed of the wind shadow steps was really fast. Every time he revolved the wind shadow steps, Li Fuchen felt the restrictions on him lessen. With a light tap on the ground, his entire body shot out like an arrow. Even a Class 1 demonic blood horse couldn't match up to his speed. 1 week later, Li Fuchen arrived at the borders of Blackrock City. According to the intel, Jiang Dahai committed a crime half a month ago and was arrested by the city's constables. After breaking through the siege, he escaped into the deep mountains. Information about Jiang Dahai appeared in Li Fuchen's mind. A 4th-level origin realm martial artist would be considered an expert in a small city. If he escaped into the deep mountains, it would be extremely difficult to catch him. Welcome to Legends of Cultivation audiobooks, where we bring ancient fantasy to life through storytelling. Follow the rise of heroes who defy fate, unlock mystical powers, and battle across celestial realms. Our audiobooks are crafted for fans of Chinese cultivation novels, filled with battles, breakthroughs, and legendary artifacts. Subscribe and be part of an unforgettable journey into the realm of immortality.